this. I think that what Donald Trump's policy was so reckless, and it had such a risk. And this is what I was trying to get at before, that I hope
this is like the left. The left will always be like, well, Donald Trump was so reckless. I mean, honestly, do you think Biden could have handled this better, or even Obama could have handled this better?
Bunker buster bombs. We don't know the scale of the damage, but even the Iranians are saying significant. And the war appears to be now at a ceasefire stage after 12 days, which is being kept and held, which I'm astonished by. Trump has no desire, he's made it clear, to put any boots on the ground or to affect any America-driven regime change. I think he was misinterpreted when he first talked about that. I think he meant an organic regime change possibly happening a la Syria in December, but we don't know. But that was my take on what he said. But he certainly clarified that now, as he doesn't want Americans to force it. What is actually wrong with what has happened and unfurled here? I mean, given what the Atomic Agency report made clear, that the Iranians have been enriching uranium from a safe civilian usage of 3.5–4% to 60% in rapid time, and they were hiding information, they were obfuscating, they weren't allowing proper, full, transparent inspections, and so on. Is there really anything ideological on putting aside Gaza, putting aside everything else, purely on the apparently imminent threat? By imminent, I mean in the next few months, that the Iranians would have had an ability to weaponize their uranium quite quickly to 90% and potentially create up to 10 nuclear bombs.
Get to
having assured the world they wouldn't do that. They are supporting and promoting every terror group, going from Hezbollah to the Houthis to Hamas, to destroy Israel. If you're Israel, why would you not preemptively strike? And if you're the United States, and you've got the leaders of the Iranian regime saying death to America and encouraging that chant, why would you also not want to neutralize the nuclear sites?
Well, let me start by saying that I really am just absolutely thrilled that, number one, that the Iranians gave that warning, and that their response was kind of like one of those Iranian responses where we want to seem tough, but we sure do want to make sure we don't kill any Americans that could get us destroyed. And I'm thrilled that Donald Trump took that off ramp and immediately started pushing a ceasefire. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but thank God that he did that, because I think all sane people around the world should be thankful that he took that off ramp and this didn't lead to a catastrophe. But no, I mean, I think that
it's good that at least Dave Smith is recognizing that, Donald, because it seems like he's putting it all in Iran, like, oh, good thing Iran, kind of held back and showed restraint. Good thing for Iran. But he's also giving credit to Trump, but it's not that Trump took an off ramp. Like, he thinks that like Iran would was like, okay, fine, we'll let you have this one. And Donald Trump was like, okay, cool. Whew. All right. Yeah, no. Okay. Let's go ahead and go through with this ceasefire and everything. Like, oh, like they gave a gift to Donald Trump. Like, no, Donald Trump gave a gift to them. He destroyed their nuclear sites and said, listen, don't F around anymore. And, he let Iran bomb some stuff or shoot some missiles somewhere, shot them all down and everything. He let Iran have this. It's not the other way around, Dave.
I think essentially your question is all flawed. I mean, even in the IAEA report that you're referring to, they also reiterated that Iran doesn't have a nuclear bomb and that they have not made the decision to start pursuing one. And so there was no imminent threat. Listen, even Benjamin Netanyahu, in his interview with Brett Baer, who always appears, as you know, has a long history of just making up how long the Iranians are to developing a nuke, even he said maybe a year, 13 months. But the point is that in order for them to do that, they would have had to kick the inspectors out. And then it would have taken them at least a matter of years to develop a nuclear bomb if they had made the political decision to start seeking one. And then it would have taken them a while. Do you think they should have one? My point.
Do you think Iran should have a nuclear bomb?
No, I don't think anybody should have nuclear weapons.
Right, but do you think in particular Iran should have one, given how much it supports terrorist groups?
Dave Smith was a big fan of Superman 4, Quest for Peace.
Well, I will answer that question. Let me just say the point I was making there is just that there was no imminent threat. We had more than enough time to do what the American legal system requires in this situation, which is that you bring it to Congress so that the people theoretically can have a debate through their representatives.
But actually, as you know, David, I saw AOC make
other presidents have made like Obama, I believe, like bombed other countries without Congress approval. So like this whole you got to bring it to Congress. Oh, okay.
In that argument, and I replied to her, almost every military strike ordered by an American president this century has been done without prior congressional approval.
Yeah, but what type of argument is that, Pierce? Every war since World War II has been fought undeclared. That doesn't mean it's the proper.
But the argument is that
system.
if you go for congressional approval, inevitably it will leak out, and you lose the element of surprise.
Yeah, okay, but then the argument also is that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and the founders very intentionally placed war-making power in the Congress because they didn't want it to be. They didn't want the president to have the war-making powers of a king. Now,
yeah, but
listen.
Damn, these two Piers and this lady right here just so far just pushing back on Dave, and I'm loving it.
Make military strikes as well. They just can't declare war.
Yeah, well, there's some debate about that amongst constitutional scholars, but yes, but that refers to like an imminent threat, which by all accounts this wasn't. Now, listen, I don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon. I think that everything that U.S. but basically all of U.S. and Israeli foreign policy seems to have been geared around incentivizing them to make one for about as long as I've been alive, which I think is very counterproductive. But I will say that I think there is a couple thoughts here that I think people should really consider. And number one, that I don't, I still think that Donald Trump, as great as it is that he walked us back from this, I think it was totally reckless and wrong for him to launch it to begin with. But think about this. The whole
I hope that someone asks him if he still deserves to be impeached, though. Remember Dave Smith? I regret voting for him and he should be impeached.
Foundational claim for the Hawks' justification about Iran getting a nuke here, because obviously lots of really, really bad people have had nuclear weapons in the history of the world, and that's not a good thing. But like Joseph Stalin and Mao Zedong and like, today, current Vladimir Putin, China, I mean, there's lots of really bad regimes that have nuclear weapons. It's almost never been on the table among serious people that we ought to launch a war of aggression and choice because a regime. But
but are they actively threatening to use it, though, is the thing. That would be like saying that would be like, hey, I have evidence that this guy is going to take his gun and shoot up a school. Well, we might as well go and it's evidence, by the way. It's not just, we think. Like, no, we have evidence. He made threats right here. He has this manifesto we've written. He said things online that he's going to go at 9 p.m. today or whatever and shoot up a school. Well, then you would want to go and prevent that, right? It's not the same thing as saying, well, these other people have guns and you're not coming and taking it away from them, so what the heck? It's like, well, yeah, but is there an imminent threat from those people with guns? Or is it just this person right here?
The claim here is that Iran is so crazy. There are these religious fundamentalists, and self-preservation simply isn't a motivating factor for them, and therefore they can't be allowed to get it.
You wouldn't dispute that. Hang on. You wouldn't dispute though the central argument that Israel has about it, which is that Iran has been the main sponsor for Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah for a number of years, all of whom are terror groups wedded to eliminating Israel. You wouldn't dispute that.
I don't dispute that they have supported those groups, and I don't dispute that that's the Israeli
isn't that
claim.
right there the existential threat to Israel?
Well, I mean, I'm sorry, but Israel. No, listen.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but you know what? Fuck Israel. Don't you know they're committing a genocide? Don't you know my dead Palestinian babies, Piers? Come on.
The only country in the Middle East who secretly has nuclear weapons and is not a member of the non-proliferation treaty, and they also funded Hamas. So I'm sorry, I do not think it's a legitimate justification for them to launch a war because they claim someone else is making nukes when they're not, and also they also funded Hamas or something like that. So no.
Can I respond to this now? First of all, this claim that there's no evidence that the regime is making nukes is totally false. It's totally false. We know that they've enriched to 60%, which means they're 90% of the way there. There's no reason to have anything above 3 to 5% for civilian use. Everybody understands that 60%, the only purpose of it is for nuclear weapons. Now, for a long time, the US and the Western world have been trying to delay the breakout time. That was the whole point of the JCPOA and all of these other deals, was that we know that they're months away, right? That's why you keep saying, oh, they've been months away for years, right? But they've been trying to extend the breakout time from months away to at least a year away for the past 10 to 15 years. So actually, everybody is fully aware that the regime has always been months away from developing nuclear weapons. Now, second of all, again, it's making these moral equivalencies between the United States or different countries or Israel or whoever having nuclear capabilities. What you're talking about here is a regime whose fundamental motto, its entire basis of existence, is death to Israel and death to the United States. That is what it stands for. That is what its leaders chant on a daily basis. That is what school children have to chant in the playground before they start school every day. Death to America, death to Israel. Every day, their strategy is, how do we destroy the United States and how do we destroy Israel? Now, when you have an expansionist ideology that has eschatological...
Dave is not liking this. Look at his face. He is seething. Like, he had to look away. Like, oh my goodness. He is like a child at school being lectured by their teacher. Like, you did something wrong there. And he's just like, ugh.
Beliefs about the end of the world and the end of Israel, and the desire is to proliferate and export its ideology of velayat faqih, not just to the Middle East, but to the entire world. And you say, I don't understand what's the difference between them having nukes and others having nukes. That is just profoundly misguided. Second of all, I
didn't say that.
He kind of did. Didn't he kind of say that though? He said he doesn't understand the difference of why, like, there are other countries that have nukes, like Russia and China. Well, so how come we're not going in there taking their nukes? Why is it doing with Iran? He did say that. So am I missing something? Am I misinterpreting this?
This isn't just about the threat of the nukes themselves. I don't think anyone's thinking to themselves that Iran, that the Islamic Republic's just going to drop a nuke as soon as it has one. The whole point of it reaching nuclear capabilities is that it becomes a deterrent state. Once it becomes a deterrent state, how are you going to deter its bad behaviors? How are you going to prevent its alliances with its regional proxies? How are you going to prevent more October 7th when everything you try to do to sanction them and contain them is met with, what are you going to do? We've got nukes. And it also prevents the containment of the region, because now UAE, Egypt, all of these other countries are so under threat that they also have to develop nuclear capabilities. So it is actually allowing them to get that far. That would be the cause of regional and global instability. So it's just preposterous to say that we should have just done nothing about that or got into another deal that just kicked the can down the road again. We are in the position that we are in because nobody contained this for as many decades as it's been a growing threat. We've passed the Neville Chamberlain moment.
Okay.
Totally. It's just total bullshit. I mean, just listen, the reason why now this 60% enrichment, which obviously for anyone paying attention was, there is another reason besides they were developing a nuclear weapon, which again, all of the intelligence says they had not even made the political decision that they wanted to develop a nuclear weapon yet, let alone weren't doing it. It was a chip to bargain away, which is actually what they were trying to do. They were in the middle of negotiations when Israel snuck attacked them and launched
that means you concede. Hang on. That means you concede that what they were doing was creating the impression that they were going to build a nuclear bomb.
Listen, there's no question that they upped the enrichment. But listen, here's the point. They weren't allowed to, under the JCPOA. Under the JCPOA, when America was involved, they weren't allowed to enrich to this level, but they were allowed to do it if America pulled out. That's in the JCPOA agreement. And so when Donald Trump tore that up, and walked away, they brought their enrichment up. What were the negotiations, Pierce, that were happening right before Israel launched their surprise attack? It was for Iran to bring the enrichment back down and America to get back in some type of agreement. They weren't going to call it the JCPOA because Donald Trump would have had to make it his own thing and not getting back into Obama's.
Trump gave them 60 days to negotiate. Trump said you got 60 days, and day 61, Israel attacked.
Right. Okay. Now, but what happened, and this was widely reported, and Donald Trump himself acknowledged this, is that the hawks insisted that you put a poison pill in the negotiations. This is what Mark Levin was freaking out about, and that the standard has to be that Iran must give up all nuclear enrichment altogether. This was always a poison pill, so that the point is that Iran was willing to negotiate, and so if you really wanted to get back into that deal, Donald Trump honestly just never should have torn up the JCPOA, and we'd all be in a much better situation. It ushered in a new inspection regime, and so we know this is why we know that they're enriching up to 60%, because they're still in the agreement and they still have the inspections, unlike Israel.
Let me ask you this.
Unlike Israel, F Israel, am I right? My dead Palestinian babies, am I right, guys?
Ask you this. I'm sure since you know about the JCPOA, I'm sure you know that it was replete with sunset provisions for up to 10 to 15 years, where all of those containment would be expired, and they would have more than $150 billion to continue developing their missiles and nuclear programs. The JCPOA was never a solution. Not only that, but not only did they inherit more than $100 billion, they were also able to expand their regional terror. And Khamenei repeatedly came on television and said, we are going to use that money to fund our allies. So there was actually a backdoor to the JCPOA where the regime, the Islamic Republic, was able to expand its regional influence and fund its allies, which eventually led to October 7th, which eventually brought us to where we are now. So yes, the JCPOA did intend to temporarily constrain their nuclear abilities, but it was always understood that by the time it expired, they would be $150 billion richer, their proxies would be fortified, they would have been responsible for significant regional destabilization, and then they would be able to enrich if they wanted to. And the only way to prevent that was to get into another nuclear deal, which would require unfreezing hundreds and billions of more. So they would just keep getting enriched, rich and empowered. So the question is, how does this end? Just a lifetime of JCPOAs?
Well, let me ask a question just to end this, because we've run out of time. Dave, hang on. Let me put a question to Dave, which is that if it turns out that all this activity in the last 2 weeks drives Iran to the negotiating table, they do agree to give up a lot of their enriched uranium and so on, reduce it back to civilian levels and so on, and there is a period of sustained peace in the region, and the Gaza hell is brought to an end as well, and in 6 months' time all this is over, should Donald Trump get the Nobel Peace Prize? Because Barack Obama got one 8 months into his tenure for basically just doing a bit of fancy chat about world peace.
Well, I guess grading on the Obama curve, everybody deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, literally, the three of us are much better candidates than Barack Obama was. So judging on that curve. No, look, I mean, I think that would be great if that's the result of all of this. I think that what Donald Trump's policy was so reckless, and it had such a risk. And this is what I was trying to get at before, that I hope
this is like the left. The left will always be like, well, Donald Trump was so reckless. Honestly, do you think Biden could have handled this better, or even Obama could have handled this better? Because honestly, I don't. Or even George W. Bush. I don't think any of those past presidents that I just listed would have handled this better than Donald Trump. But Dave Smith has to keep coping and justifying his overreaction to all this, that he has to now blame Donald Trump and go, well, it was just so reckless and it could have led us to this. Yeah, but it didn't. And why was that? It was because of the leadership of Donald Trump.
Hope people appreciate. Look, if Iran had not made the calculation to give advanced warning,
it's Iran,
and had just
okay, let's give Iran the Nobel Peace Prize then, huh? Let's give it to them, because if it was all because of Iran, they're the ones that showed restraint and wanted peace. It was Iran. It was us bully United States and Israel that try to F everything up. If it wasn't for Iran's restraints, we would be in World War III, according to Dave Smith.
Fired off missiles the way
why do you think they did that?
Israel. But this is the whole point, Piers.
I think Trump called their bluff. I think Trump called their bluff because he realized that what Israel had done over a period of days is expose the Iranian regime as having a military that was a dud.
It's Pierce.
couldn't
It's because
even
they
deal
don't
with
want
what
it.
Israel was
They
flying at
don't
them.
want. They don't want to be destroyed. They would rather rule than be destroyed.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
But the point is that we put this in the hands of the Iranian government. If they hadn't done that, we may have had to launch a full regime. What would Donald Trump have done if 50 or 100 Americans had been killed in an Iranian attack?
Well, thankfully, that has not.
We risked the
But that didn't happen.
Thankfully, that
And
hasn't happened because Iran was so panicky. They actually gave prior warnings to everybody to make sure it didn't happen.
So maybe they're not such a scary threat after all.
Well,
Oh my God, are you
that's an
kidding
interesting
me?
point
Are
if you
you
take away their
kidding
nuclear
me?
weapons. Elica, final word to you very quickly.
Yes. Okay. Your whole point, this whole conversation and everything that you've been saying online is that Israel is engaging in terrorism, ethnic cleansing, all of these things that you claim to be against. And yet you are so happy to engage in these deals that enrich the Islamic Republic and its machinery of oppression to hang and lynch and torture women. So if you're so against what Israel is doing, if you're so against funding what Israel is doing, why are you so happy to fund this regime in its domestic and regional terror by the same means of empowering them with money through the diplomatic?
I know,
Okay.
it's crazy. It's almost like I'm opposing war across the board.
You're opposing war by actually
all of these
supporting
wars. Why would that
okay,
be?
so you're opposing war, okay, like by first of all instigating more war down the road, okay, that's the Neville Chamberlain
You're
moment.
just asserting that. It's nonsense.
Second of
No,
all,
it's not
you
a
are
fact. A prediction
you are
of the
happy-
future is not a
you are
fact.
happy.
Please.
You are happy for Iranians to be
Okay.
slaughtered, raped, killed, and hanged, so long as in
Nice
your
try.
fantasy world you're
Nice
opposing
try.
war,
You're gonna
but you're
have to
not
get- you're
okay
gonna
with
have to
it
get
in
someone
Gaza.
better, Pierce.
But you're
All
not
right.
okay with it in
Pierce.
Gaza.
I
You're an
can't believe
idiot.
Dave's
You're a
gonna
Maybe you
be
got
on
a
this.
friend who's better.
Okay.
There's no,
Have a nice
everyone's
hope
better
from
than
Dave.
your stupidity. You are the most demoralized, brain-rotted idiot alive. Thank you.
All right, take a deep breath.
Thank you both very much indeed. I appreciate it.
She's acting like she's the emotional one here, but yeah, listen, I think Dave Smith got cooked in that one. And I know as soon as I post this, I'm going to get a lot of Dave supporters like, no, actually, he brought up nothing but facts. I'm sorry, but no, if your position was Iran was the one that settled everything down because they showed their great restraint and it was just us being bullies and all this nonsense. Like, no, I'm sorry. It was because of Donald Trump's leadership of why we were able to navigate this as well as we did. But Dave Smith wants to cope and justify all of his freaking out that he did the last 2 weeks or so by saying, well, Trump was really reckless. It's like what the left does. They always do that stuff. You know, when Trump does something or when something happens and Trump, like when Trump does something they don't agree with and then navigates us back onto the correct path or whatever, it's like, yeah, but it was his recklessness. It's like, oh, really? Do you really think any other president would have handled that as well? I'll repeat again. Do you think this situation that just happened with Iran and Israel and stuff, do you really think Obama could have done a better job, or Joe Biden could have done a better job, or Kamala Harris could have done a better job, or George W. Bush could have done a better job? Like, no, I honestly don't think they could have. I think we would have been under Bush, we'd have definitely been at war. With Obama, I don't know. He probably would have just paid them off or something. I don't know. And Biden wouldn't even have known what was going on. And Kamala would have just been too cackling to even make a good decision, getting drunk and cackling her ass off. So, like, no, I don't think they would have handled it any better. I think that Trump did a good job handling this whole situation. And Dave Smith has no choice but to cope and seethe over it. And instead of acknowledging that, hey, maybe he overreacted, or maybe he's a little too brain rotted from all his anti-Israel propaganda, that he's not able to realize that he was just wrong on this. But what did you guys think? Sound off in the comment section below. Give this video a like if you liked it, and if you really liked it, subscribe to my channel. I have a whole bunch of content like this. Also, check out Piers Morgan Uncensored as well. He has a bunch of stuff like this, so go ahead and check it out as well.